This last section is very, very short. This is the Beyond section. The first poem is called When God Spoke. Slide. Thank you. When God spoke his name, as gods often do, he set the world spinning, beginning anew. But maybe a cough or a sneeze or a yawn or a hum set the vibe that turned on the dawn. Or maybe a hiccup or a belch was the tone that set off the circles and cycles and sound. The Tender Trap. I love you dearly, but I don't know words to say. You love me clearly, but your fears get in my way. I ask you merely, may I stand in my own light? I hold you near me as you shudder that I might. I stand here sheerly covered in my secret thought. I blame you squarely that my life has come to naught. I should be carefree. Instead, I feel that I'm caught. My reflection scares me. This tender trap is taut. My destiny dares me to make my dreams come true. I love you dearly, but I must free myself from you. The Terror. The terror that you feel is but the terror you instill. You cower at my nakedness, though I'm stripped upon your will. The question of my fate rests with my demon's advocate. Will I reach my destination before it is too late? The visions that I see have been turned to destroy me. No one will help me realize what 10 say can never be. A why not for every why, and a laugh for every cry. Not one will help direct my life, yet many assist me to die. You ask me to express my rage, to put my anger on the page, then you pull the curtain down on me as I struggle to the stage. The terror that you feel is just the terror you instill. I am raw inside, where once was a heart, and you have made a meal. Firewater. First felt was the fire. 5 fingers, a blazing inferno flashing across my cheek. I turned the other and heard the flush of water in my ear. You posed so nobly nude. An image of you I saw in a book, but the ghost of you is what I took, and it haunts me all the same, and what is more, I can't remember your name. I did see it there, but in trying to erase away some of my discomfort, your name faded right along. I saw your face. It was like I could look directly into your eyes, staring back at me from an old dog-eared photograph faithfully reproduced here in this volume. I gaze upon your eyes, searching for some sign of emotion. I find none, but all that I do see is life, recognition. You posed so nobly nude, full frontal, full back view, standing on the sideboard of some beautiful automobile whose occupants are dressed in their best for the occasion. I am in awe of your ashen black body so strong. I cannot imagine how hands could take pleasure in the torture they have documented here. Who are they so proud of their disdain for you they have etched it into your flesh? And who are you to stand so naked and vain as to show no anger, no fear, nor pain? You are exquisite in your serenity. The sense of your suffering rolls over me like a wave. You are a rendering of grace in surrender. I shudder. On the next page, where I seek solace, relief, comfort, retreat from the ache I feel as my empathy for you manifests as a hurt that is now all my own, I find you now in slumber. You are there, limp and dangling, draped like fine fabric. I gaze upon your eyes, searching for some sign of an emotion. I find none, but all that I do see is death, recognition. You posed so nobly nude. The next poem never got written. It got started, it didn't get complete. But it's a rhyming poem, and those usually take a little bit longer. So in the spirit of, actually I was writing a poem in the spirit of the tragedy of the 11th, and the idea that they named the operation Enduring Freedom. Now, I don't know how that sounds to you. I mean, enduring freedom is kind of like a nice concept. I mean, freedom is something that's going to last a long time. But if you listen, words are all we have, and if you think of enduring freedom as, is freedom so painful that it hurts? If you start thinking, you can run the next slide. If you start thinking of that freedom is now this thing that it costs us so much and it comes with such great pain, and now we spend all our effort in not the freedom, but in trying to maintain the freedom, and at what price is peace, and these slides go with it. Go ahead, let's have a little music and we'll finish the slides, and I'll read you my last poem. This is Enduring Freedom, which is yet to be written. Last poem, the angry poem. This is my angry poem because I'm getting in touch with my rage. No. This is my angry page because I'm getting in touch with my rage. This is my cry because I'm trying like a mother not to live instead of to die. This is my angry decree because I'm so sick of poverty and not having enough cash to deal with my reality or escape from it. This is my angry notion because I'm so sick of too much ado to do something constructive with this emotion, my anger, except trying not to let it cook all up inside me like a virus, boil over and extinguish my flame. This is my angry song. Say it loud. I'm angry and proud enough to know my anger and face whatever fear or pain is locked inside of it. Let this be your poem. This is our angry song. Say it loud. We're angry and proud enough to know our anger and face whatever fear or pain is locked inside, and let it go. Thank you.
Thoughts on an Untitled Artwork by Frederick Weston. The Chase is a television program my partner Dennis became obsessed with several years ago, and now watches from time to time in reruns. Most of my early life, however, was lived without a television. Once we made the move from central Harlem to Morningside Gardens, among the first things I watched that made a strong impact was an omnibus production of Oscar Wilde's Salome, starring Eartha Kitt. The first time the play, which we had owned in a text version and I had already read, now made sense, because I realized it was two plays superimposed one on another. One, turning on the young captain and the young Syrian's love for him, which I clearly recognized as homosexual and forbidden, and the other, turning on the occasion of Herod Antipas Tetrarch of Judea with his adopted daughter Salome, which the play presents as incestuous and equally beyond the pale. The one-act tragedy climaxes in suicides and official murders. Kill that woman. And I learned later, was never performed by Sarah Bernhardt, for whom it had been written in French and translated by Wilde and his own lover, Alfred Lord Douglas, into elegant English. But it helped me learn early that art, life, happened in layers. And if the layers can be related to one another, and we can show the relationship either of stories with stories or stories with pictures, we broach an understanding amenable to artistic representation. Quiz shows are multiple layered experiences for the viewer. To what extent does the contestant's knowledge mirror your own? The back and forth between the two is how you experience and enjoy the show. Work in the studio audience where you will. That's why they're so popular. When Fred and I did our interview, Fred gave me an artwork. It's a sealed mini can of Diet Coke. There's no liquid in it, but there are little beans, pebbles, or for all I know, dried black-eyed peas, which rattle if you shake it. The can itself bears the painting in red and black of the Coca-Cola Company. The section with the commercial data printed in white and red has been hastily painted out in silver, and over that, Fred, with a black Sharpie, has signed it to Uncle Chip. Make a joyful noise. Peace and love, Frederick. The last word is his signature, and it has the largest and most complicated letters. Perhaps you remember when I was holding it up. The first line, the salutation to an older black writer by a younger black artist, contains a purposely problematic word, which I have no doubts that Fred was wholly aware of, addressing an older black man as uncle, in quotes. My own younger cousin, Hubert D. Delany, also calls me Uncle Chip, but because we are related by the marriage of his great-grandmother to my blood Uncle Hubert. Thanks, Bill. To my blood Uncle Hubert, there is no racial implication, although my very talented 26-year-old cousin may be aware that there would be one were we not. I find it infinitely ironic that he is the only one of my cousins who has no blood relation to me I know of who is interested in writing and photography as art. For many years in the South, whites would address all older black men as uncle or boy, and here those quotes mean the same thing as Fred intended on his artwork to me, and not at all what my cousin means when he calls me that. Make a joyful noise is also the beginning of a religious message. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Psalm 100. A call for international peace, and the shortest psalm in the Old Testament. What all this brings me to is the importance of names in art, especially to modern artists who do not have the reassurance of simple representational skill to assure them whatever measure of immortality as it would up until the beginning of the last century. On Fred's Coca-Cola container, his signature, Frederick, is the largest word other than the fragment O-K-E letters that spill off the top and the bottom of the can. I do not know how many of these he made or gave away. My suspicion is he thought of them as ultimately disposable, but probably made a whole batch at the same time, like a temporal collage of similar objects to bear his name on presentation. As in a quiz show, the relationship among the artist, the artwork, a signature and dedication, and the various elements entailed in them are experienced in layers. As a collage artist, Fred's work consisted of the intelligent and beautiful selection of many pre-extant images transferred to masonite, cardboard, canvases. I don't have any sure knowledge of the medium behind the layered images of his I actually saw that day we did the interview in the office-turned-gallery, any more than I have a sure knowledge of what's inside the can to make it rattle when I pick it up, shake it, or move it from place to place. It's closer to sculpture than painting and does not hang on any wall, nor have I any idea how much of Fred's work falls into this genre. That is part of the mystery of his work, and it is a mystery that can't be solved, at least by me or someone else, without, at the very least, an X-ray machine or ultrasound, or destroying the work itself to find out, or, in any case, far more knowledge of his career than I have today. Is there only one? Did 6 come in a pack? Has he made dozens or hundreds of such disposable works in the course of decades? To an ordinary possessor of such a work, like myself, who owns it without technical assistant or special knowledge, it's a mystery. When Fred gave it to me, it never occurred to me to ask what was inside. What interests me about it today is that when I drank Coke because of my diabetes, I always drank Diet, and to this day, I swear I cannot tell the difference between Diet and the real thing, though I have largely given up soft drinks entirely. I will never know if Fred originally got the cans for an artwork or to drink himself, or whether he too drank Diet Coke because of his health, as I did. And in so much postmodern, and as in so much postmodernist art, it is the name alone that vouchsafes the work's authenticity, value, as well as, in this case, its mass-produced origin. That in itself creates a thematic link between the two of us, something that anyone who knows my work can well recognize. The movement dramatized between garbage collection, and art. I believe I gave him a book and signed it on the same occasion. Probably I brought it from Philadelphia to give him, but today I have no memory of what book it was, though I suspect it was one of 2 in which the protagonist was, at least for a time, a garbage man.
The first time I went to Fred's apartment in Chelsea to interview him was in the spring of 2019, which of course feels like 2,000 years ago. I was writing the press release for his first solo show at Gordon Robichaud, so we spent a couple of hours talking about what the works were and how they came to be. By that time, we had hung out a bunch at openings and things, and he had performed a poem at my reading series, Adult Contemporary. But going into his apartment was a new layer of intimacy, kind of like stepping into his past, but much more than that. It was like entering the beautiful tangle of systems that he created to process his past. When I came in, there was a feeling of, so this is everything. Organized chaos, I asked. I remember him calling it a riot of clutter. He told me that before he had gotten this studio, he had lost everything, in quotes, 3 times. The quotes meant that though it had felt like he had lost everything, he hadn't really, because his supply of materials had so quickly been replenished. And here to prove that was this apartment, packed wall to wall with stuff. He said, "My resource holding potential is like way, way up there. I'm a collector." I think we hung out in the bedroom first, which was also his studio. We sat on the corner of his bed. The bedroom is where he kept all his binders, stuffed archives and collections with idiosyncratic names like Fruit, Frisbee, Police, Fire Island. There were collages and paper shrines all over the walls. words and images that freely associated apart and together, almost like a dream. Indeed, the bedroom, which was also his studio, was a sort of dream center. I make all my work in bed, he told me. The foremostness of the bedroom and the bed felt like a declaration of a priority. The priority was the comfort of home. Like, yes, I will work. Yes, I want to work. And yes, I will also rest and dream while I work. Of course, as a person who got to interview him in this place of work and rest, I also got to partake in this pleasured way of working. With Fred, the vibe was casual, while the work was always urgent and in action. He explained it to me. The compulsion to work was linked with the compulsion to collect. Making art provided a context to get rid of all this stuff that he could never get rid of. And because Fred was always making art, even at that point, he had enough work for many, many shows. In the living room, we cycled through the works that were going into that first show. I was especially drawn to a collage on a foam core board called Divorce from My Cowardice, a meditation on yellow, or as Fred put it, what is a yellow feeling? Caution tape, a shiny yellow condom wrapper, an old Metro card, a cut logo from old Gristetti's and Virgin Records bags, stores that don't exist anymore, objects that signify a time and place that have changed so much. We talked about how sad it is when places and people go away or change beyond recognition, but also how pleasurable it is to recall them, to fondle their debris together and float away together. This was Fred's brilliance, this rendering of complex emotions, of the feeling of memory with colors and objects and arrangements in a way that words never could. What I still can't get over is that Fred will no longer be making new work in that apartment in Chelsea, new work for us to talk about. The last time I interviewed Fred was 2 weeks before he died. This time, I got into his bed with him for the interview. By that point, he was in too much pain to sit or stand for long periods. He was telling me some of his theories about clothing, the importance of having clothes that serve you and comfort you. I told him, I have this tattered old t-shirt that I wear as a nightgown that I've had for years and years. And you know how you get one hole in a t-shirt and then soon it's holes everywhere, he said. Yes, I said. And now I have to get a new one, but I'm so attached to the old one. No, he said. Just make little spider webs. Make spider webs? Yes, like little spider webs in the holes. Actually, you could hang something really cute inside of those holes. Like, put some mesh in it? No, he said. Like, you make the mesh. Get a thread, a long thread, and just go in and out, until you get to the center. Like you make a dream catcher. Well, I said, I don't know how to sew, so that's never going to happen. It's not sewing, Fred said, pausing. It's meditating. Hanging out in Fred's bedroom that afternoon felt like meditating, time traveling, dreaming. I was there to record him talk about the works going into this show, and we began our conversation by talking about Claude Payne. Payne, a fashion designer, was Fred's old friend from Detroit who he came out to New York with. They were a little family, Fred told me, with a dog named Blues, a cat named Mercedes, and another cat named Royce. In this clip, Fred talks about Payne and the thought process behind the dot matrix printer portraits he did of Payne and himself.
These are portraits of Claude Payne taken off of a dot matrix portrait print of his face. They used to do that in Times Square. Mm-hmm. So I would take those dot matrix prints and extrapolate on them, kind of like the Andy Warhol thing, mm-hmm. and then put many versions up together to see what we come up with. Mm-hmm. I work with Claude. He was a fashion designer, and I was kind of his assistant PR, a little bit of everything, cutter, paster, whatever.
Did you use those for him?
Yes.
Wasn't this part
Actually,
of
this was actually in his house. This
Uh-huh.
was part of a piece that I made for him for his house. It had 4 versions of him in a big frame. It was beautiful.
And you made them also to do PR for his shows and stuff or something.
No,
right?
these were just for him.
These were just for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was a very good friend.
He was a very good friend.
You were friends in Detroit.
We were very good friends. We were close.
Yeah, you lived together at one time.
We lived together. We did everything together. We lived together. We worked together. We did everything together at one time.
Yeah.
And that was actually the way I managed to stay here and live here for so long.
Was he employed you?
If you want to call it employment, no, I would be on unemployment and I could afford to work for him.
Yeah. Yeah. But he would pay you.
We ate, we did, no, he didn't pay me.
didn't
We did
pay.
everything together. We ate, we did everything at the same pot.
Oh.
We really were, we were a family. We did everything at the same pot. I don't know if I got paid so much. Yeah, but we did everything. We went to parties together. We did everything together. We ate together. We made sure everybody had what everybody needed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's him again.
That's him again. Okay.
He had those Zapata mustaches. Everybody had those porno mustaches. back
Right.
then.
Yeah. The round sunglasses.
Actually, that was kids' kind of thing. And round and also colorful.
Okay.
His were multicolor.
Uh-huh.
You'll probably see that on some of the pieces. The glasses were really multicolored.
Like rainbow?
Like rainbow.
Uh-huh. Like that rainbow glass? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He
Very
he
70s.
searched far and wide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, this is a picture of me, actually, from the same
Oh.
process.
This is Freddie in Green.
Mm-hmm.
Paradise Garage.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm trying to, actually, I'm taking my cues from the Lower East Side and trying to be a little more free and savage with myself.
In this?
Coloring with crayon and marker and really hard,
Uh-huh. So not being so restrained.
not being restrained, not trying to be pretty.
Not trying to be pretty. That's pretty.
Well, I'm trying to be pretty.
This is
Sometimes you try
self-portrait.
to be pretty.
Sometimes you just are pretty and you can't help it, right?
See me and my Zapata mustache.
There's your Zapata mustache. So this is from the dot matrix printer as well. And then you print, then you have it, and then you draw.
Actually, it would be fun. Sometimes I just take them and just photocopy them. Just like that. And then just do things to them. And sometimes I would do things before I photocopied them. Oh, okay. Or I photocopy them and do things to them afterwards. It's always interesting to see what I could get out of it. Color copying was really very new.
Yeah.
So it's just the idea of what can you get? What can you push the machine to do? What can you make the machine do?
Right. What can you make the machine
What can you make the machine
that you
do
can't do?
that you can't do?
Right.
Meeting Frederick was like meeting a passage from the future, from a book that I too was a part of. He called me nephew immediately, which I took as recognition of something that only people whose memories were similar to ours would recognize as an initiation. Artists are communicators. Fred was one of great reflection. I believe everything that he did received his consideration in a way that was similar to myself. It was like meeting myself, but 40 years my senior. Fred worked in fashion. I had worked in fashion. Fred made a zine. I also made a zine. Fred threw parties. I threw parties, hosted many things. And he kind of just always had a way to like look at life through the things he was memorializing or memorying, which is a similar way that I understand life and practice. Collage was, I believe, Fred's way of life, as in working through refraction and working through dissonance to kind of drive out a divine like energy, a divine storyline. I chose Barry 144 Portraits for its alchemical qualities. this 12 by 12, which is similar to like what you might assume, what you might remember as a times table and how you learned how to communicate through the language of numbers. And similarly, Fred was communicating through that, kind of like breaking down our lives through this 12 by 12, which is organized by 12 categories. So like they go similar to a times table. They go from 1 to 12 on each side. Those categories being how we address our bodies, them being very formal, formal, semi-formal, informal, dressy, business, athletic, outdoor, housewear, casual, lounge, and intimates, which how Fred saw that was like we have 144. When you multiply these numbers together, we have 144 ways to like present ourselves, 144 events to go to, which 144 divided by like, so technically he organized it into 3 8s. So the 12, your day is organized into 3 8s in Frederick's logic, as in like the first 8 hours is maybe probably spent more intimately or in sleep, which is like you're probably not trying to perform the self as much as remember how you perform the self, and then there are the 16-hour periods, or 2 8-hour periods that equal up to the 16-hour period, which might mean you need to change your outfits or to me, like your personality, because we don't change 24 times a day and there's 24 hours in a day. So when I look at the 144, you divide that by 24, you get 16. So there's like 16 times to be 24 versions of yourself within this work. And Fred defined it as style, like what would happen as you like kind of like address all these bodies, which I do believe is real, but I think style is something that we utilize to, style is like your protection. So your style, your clothing, your anything. So when I look at this work, I also think about how you're going from a very private self to a very public exposed self, and what it is you might hide or expose within that period. Similarly, when I look at this work and I think of talking to Frederick about this Polaroid series and other Polaroid series, I remember that some of these men who Fred would shoot would be men who he dated, other men who just like find on the street who he wanted to, dress in his clothes, or like through these ideas and through these many selves and many memories of self. In this communication of selves, I found that Fred was also like hiding many kind of gay realities for himself. Or for like just in general in history, because like whenever a black audience is viewing an image of a black body, it's typical that like what's in the image might not be actually what's, like the viewer might not be, depending on who the viewer is, might not be visualizing the kind of hidden reality, which I think if you compound like Fred being black and gay into this practice, and that also speaks to what we hide or like what we find as black gay bodies and like what our limitations are within that. So when I look at these images, I also think about like how within this work, how contemporary it is, how like some of the looks are, how much is exposed, sheer pantyhose with like a penis being shown, or crop tops, and like I don't think things like that at the time in between 1993 and 96 were what we traditionally would have relied on like a man wearing. So there was like, to me, there's also like a gay play here, like this kind of quiet thing that's happening behind the scenes, which I think as Fred is a like divine communicator and in a divine light, he was able to oftentimes through his refractions and what he would pull out of all the things that he remembered, because I don't think anything in Fred's life was not up for consideration for collage or to be repurposed. Because I do believe that for Black people, collage is a life practice that doesn't necessarily start or end with art. And I think that Fred was oftentimes playing through many through many planes of reality and queerness to get to the exposing of himself. Yeah. As I look at his images, I'm often reminded of the time and how there wasn't space for a Fred to exist. So it was like, through his zine and through the many ways that he was kind of creating these lives, you could see that he was interested in kind of finally maybe creating a life memorial for a space for people like Fred, for people like us. And even that welcome and that consideration was present in Alfred's meetings when we were, doing work on a show together. And every time I met Fred, and he nephewed me, and I became, not his nephew in blood, and not even his nephew. Yeah, I became his nephew more in language, as in like we shared a private language that only what we remembered could be a part of. So yeah, very thankful for Fred.
Hi, my name's LJ Roberts. I'm so honored to be here tonight for the book launch of DUETS, Frederick Weston and Samuel Delany in Conversation. Of course, I'm heartbroken that Fred couldn't be here. I know he's here in spirit. If he were here, he'd tell me that I'm paler than the background and I look like the friendly ghost. He loved to call me that. Of course, the background is a selection of the binders that he collected his collage materials into. This was my favorite sequence in his apartment. Detroit, Dirty Bird, Disorders, Disneyland. I think we had those things in common with each other. So I wanted to honor him by having it here. I loved going over to Fred's apartment. It was a place I've spent a lot of time in for the past 6 years. His apartment was an installation. It was his art. It was his work. It was his life. He lived in and breathed it. It was a never-ending trove of fascination and enchantment. I could spend hours and hours there, and I did. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today in terms of Fred's work, there was a lot to choose from. And what I decided to talk about was fashion, which was a little surprising to me. Of course, I think people recognize that Fred was one of the most stylish and chic people in New York City. He always had a look. He always knew how to work a look. He had the best outfits and best style. And the first time we really hung out, it was at No Pants, No Problem, which was a party that Jessica Whitbread and Visual Aids threw together on the Lower East Side. And we hung out the whole night. And Fred was wearing a blazer, a silk scarf, and a newsboy cap, and no one had pants on. But he owned that room, and I was completely enthralled. And then I started going over to hang out a lot. And one of the first things that we looked at together was his archive of fashion illustrations. Fred went to FIT to study menswear, and those fashion illustrations that he made, they're incredible. And one of the reasons I love them so much is because he knew my gender and he saw my gender before I even knew what gender was. I was a little kid when he made those illustrations, but he saw me before I could see myself. He was so visionary and so accepting, and he designed with love and humanity for people with queer bodies. And immediately I felt accepted by him. And we did a lot of things over the years that had to do with fashion. We went and saw a documentary on Andre Leontali together at the Angelica. And one of our last outings out of his apartment was at the end of 2019. We went to Dapper Q fashion show, and he wore this neon yellow shirt and these splatter painted pants and a hat, and he just owned it. You know, it was all these amazing designers, and we got to sit in the front row of the catwalk, and you know, it just was such an incredible experience because he was a genius with fashion and he had such interesting things to say, and he appreciated all of these young designers so much. And you know, that was, I think, a lot of young people's experience with him. Was he was so, his commentary was so useful and so insightful and so affirming. You know, fashion is in all of his work. It's in his collages, it's in his performance. He was planning a movie that he talked about in the last few months of his life. And there's a great video that I took where he explains that it's going to be a women's movie and a men's movie and a fashion movie and an art movie. And I also have this memory that is a little hard to think about, but he had this really tough appointment towards the end of his life, and I called him knowing that there was going to be hard news. And you know, it was hard to hear the news, and then he just couldn't stop talking about the healthcare provider's Chanel suit and how fabulous the suit was. And he could always kind of lift himself up. You know, he's really a positive, incredible person. And you know, after he passed away, I got a text from Ted Kerr that was like, today I'm gonna wear my shorts and leggings in honor of Fred. And he loved that look, and I loved that look, and I'll always think of wearing shorts with leggings, which I also do a lot, as a Fred thing. And you know, for him, he was very passionate about fashion, but he came in it with a lens of loving people and loving humanity and loving all sorts of bodies and genders. And I always felt safe with him because of that. And I'll always be grateful for him, and I'll always carry that with me. Thank you.